Because people get tired of talking about things that cause other people to get upset. Like in some families, dysfunctional families, people have certain topics that are off limits. We don't talk about those because people get heated and then we
Hmm.
end up fighting, and it's probably better off not to just to stay out of those. Now, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, because I've noticed that my friends are exhausted from trying to make their white friends feel better. Genuinely, just really tired. It's and it's because labor is being required of you, or at least being asked of you,
Hmm.
and there's no agency sometimes. Like the privilege says, well, you're my friend, right? It's like a dysfunctional relationship with a
Yeah.
narcissist. It's like we don't even see it. We're like, oh yeah, you're my friend, you'll help me with this. It's like, but you have, and then that compounds over and over and over every day, week after week. It's like, oh, I mean, I love all my people, but they're making me really tired.
Yeah.
And so that's not the point. I was hoping something refreshing, something that you would find refreshing.
Mm. Hmm.
Anything.
Uh,
I don't care what.
I guess any number of psychological things like well, this the topic. I would say like that topic is, I guess, would be it has the most charge or the most heat around it because um, uh, it's the most recent and and like um, I could probably speak the most. I would probably have the most to say because it's the like currently because I would well yeah because I would because it has the most of my current experiences and it would uh, and knowing our conversations it would very likely lead into something else maybe pretty quickly.
Sure.
uh, it just might. Uh, so I am, and because I think we would because I think we would share, uh, we would like because we share similar viewpoints on in this area, we might not be there long. You know, uh, I think I think the because it extends the portion of the discussion around around race and all that like it this portion of it it goes past uh, of course myself feeling tired with the with the racial things and all that that you mentioned it goes into other areas too like it goes into job it goes into class it goes into a lot of things and there's a lot more areas that need there's a lot of areas that need advocacy that it's unfortunate uh, that that a lot that Black Americans find themselves in, but it's but like you pointed out before, uh, a lot of people who don't know how to advocate for themselves find themselves in more than one of these categories. Black Americans are the ones that have the loudest voice right now. Uh, and it's like we're the ones right now with like the I guess the language of defund the police. Like this is the one that has the most most heat around it. In my recent experience of could you use language that's more nice? Could you use language that if you just put it a different way or if you just said something that was uh, if you just said something that was a little bit something if you just then fill in the blank with whatever would appease you know you in some way the then maybe we'll listen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that yeah it never works, right? That would if that were the case then we wouldn't be having this movement right now. Like we wouldn't be having these conversations right now. Like we wouldn't be at this point. Um, but even with some quote unquote allies or people who get it, and like after stating, I was tired of explaining this to white Americans. There's white Americans I sit with that I have this conversation with that would say that they're allies and say that they go to marches. That I it's like there's this gap of communications that Black America sits on, where they know the experiences and the history and why they can't say certain things or why they can't act a certain way or why they have to act a certain way. And then on the other end of the gap, there's portions of white America that says, "Oh well, why can't you just do what the police say? Why can't you just ask for it in this certain way?" And in that gap, like there's a lot of dead bodies, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of people that have been murdered by police. There's a lot of people that weren't caught on film. Uh, there's a lot of systemic racism that is felt and experienced and not just read about and not just heard about, or that wasn't in a documentary, but that's in your family tree. And like to and yeah, like I think a lot of a lot of the Black culture is tired of jumping that gap. But what I'm seeing now happen is like a lot of white Americans are starting to take on the load of, oh, well, let's start to build that gap in our ally work here. And that's why books like White Fragility are starting to be a real big read. Um, they're, I can't even think of the other major titles that are big right now that they're saying, hey, white America, read these books. Um, but but yeah, um,
I listed some on the show yesterday if you want to go back, or the day before, I can't remember,
mm,
and some blogs.
yeah, and well, and the big there's a like there, and there's numerous universities and I mean Ivy League schools. I mean, whether they're Ivy League or not, but their African American history courses are free. Like the stuff that they offer, like the education, the background, taught by professors that uh, that have real stock in these movements historically. A lot of these courses are free, and I've thrown some of these up on my Facebook page. I've thrown up some of these resources, like these. These are out there. These conversations, these educational pieces, like these are great things. But I think things like these books and the way they're written meets people at different points of that gap, uh, wherever they're at. Like it meets them where they're at. The goal is, if the goal is progress, then whatever gets us there is is the goal. Whatever, like constant progress, like the process of moving forward is the goal. And as long as in my judgment, as long as we keep moving in that direction, then we're attaining our goal. But
There's no time limit. There's no urgency. We've been incrementally looking at this for a long time. We need to actually make progress so it doesn't look the same in 50 years as it did 50 years ago. You don't feel that, let's stop talking and let's get it done.
Everybody feels that. Everybody feels that. Like, to what degree? Like, yes, I feel that to push and to change and to make change happen now. I would like to see a lot of these changes happen now in my lifetime, so that the like the like the people that came before me that were able to make the significant pushes and the significant things they did, that I could live in the America I live in today, that I don't have to do sit-ins to make a standpoint, that I don't have to do a bus boycott, that I'm not fighting an overt and public Jim Crow, right? That I'm not uh, that I'm not battling these things in such a in the same forum, right? The I feel the push and the urgency that whoever is going to be jumping off of my shoulders in the next generation, that they can look back at this time and say, like, yeah, I don't feel the same pressures of I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to like fearfully speak to my kids every time I talk to them about being around police officers. I'm gonna have to fearfully speak to my kids about code switching when you're around black people versus when you're around white people, or when you're in an interview at certain places versus an interview at other places.
Yeah.
Like I would I would like I would like for I would like for the Black Americans that come after me to be able to have a place of progress that is, yeah, that is much further beyond where I'm at. So I'm moving to urgency of like I feel the urgency in that sense, absolutely, right?
You mentioned some books, and I was thinking you and I have had many conversations over the years about many books, and
Mhm.
as we've dug into these conversations, we were equally excited about them. That's my perception. That like maybe I was ahead of you sometimes you were ahead of me, and so we would read stuff or watch or listen, and we would absorb new information, and it wasn't the idea that I was doing it for your sake or you were doing it for my sake, but we were on a co journey. We were both interested and we both felt that there was a lot to gain from the new knowledge we were achieving. Does it feel like that here, or does it feel more like that, that it's hopelessly out of step now as compared to our other journeys together?
I mean, with us or
Yeah,
just
you
like
and me
just internally
particularly. Yeah.
with these with this.
Because I don't want it to be like that, but I know that it's a burden to even ask the question, and I know that's going to happen as long I'm ready to flag it every time. Like I understand what I'm
Right.
doing here, and but the idea that white people are wrong and have been wrong for a long time, and have all the work to do. Like you mentioned the books, you mentioned all the other information, and so when we were reading some of the books that we've read, we were both equally interested.
Mhm.
But here you've done the work already, and the white people who are catching up, they may say or not say it, but at least think it. They may think, oh, I wish this were easier. I wish I didn't have to spend 3 hours figuring this all out. I wish I didn't have to challenge myself so much, or really look at the bullshit in my own value system, not just the one I grew up with. But then after that, I have to look at the bullshit in the whole system. I have to realize I don't deserve all the good things I have. I have to realize that I have been coddled and pampered and privileged. And isn't there an easier way we could do this? And.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with what you said. Like, I have to realize X, Y, and Z. Any amount of like, let me answer your question first off. Like, I mean, the books are different, but I think with as far as like the books and all that stuff go, yeah, I mean that's different. But the for you and I, like the relationship is the same because like the realization's always been there. You know what I mean? Like the understanding has always been there. Like that. Like in that, like for you, like that testimony of how you've interacted with your students, like treated your students, and how you've engaged with like the community, whether it was while you're in Erie or whatever, like that was evidence of like realization and things already, right? Like that was like that work, and that like there was like what's I don't even want to say empathy, but it was just like you were just like you were human already, right? like yeah, I mean like everybody has like levels of bias and whatever else, but like but it was like you got it. So like now where it's public, like you're where it's like, oh, it's widely accepted that, oh, maybe systematic racism is a thing. Maybe white supremacy is, maybe that is, like, maybe that is, it's still, maybe that's still around. Like now that that's mainstream, right? Like uh, you're someone who was much further along, who was much further along in that realization, in my judgment, right? Because because I mean, to be honest, like I don't feel any differently towards you, like than I did before. So like that's so yeah, like I mean to yeah, to be honest, like I mean, if we're reading different stuff now, like then I mean then that's different, but the relationship's the same, largely because the like you hit the nail on the head. The goal is for me is the realization. The goal for in my mind is the uh, is like is the emotional knowledge, the emotional intellect.
Mm.
Because there are I've had conversations with people where they could tell me dates and things about Black history. They're like, oh, don't you know this person? Oh, well, I did my research about this, and you don't know who that is. I'm like, you have no idea what it feels like to be connected to any of this. Like this is a checkbox. It's a checkbox for you to know who this person is, and it removes any emotional responsibility, which means that it removes any responsibility period for you. For now, like you just got to read a book and you got to move on, like it was you know praying the rosary for a day or something. Well, whatever. Like like it was literally just a checkbox item. It was a to-do list. Like the realization is it's a much deeper work than reading these books, but that seems to be the gateway of getting people to relate to Black history in this country, right? Like that's because it's America. This is American history, right? The song "This Is America," right? Like that song was huge, and it made people feel very uncomfortable because he was showing a lot of blunt and a lot of very ugly things. But it's like, hey, for Black America, this is a part of our history, and whatever can get into people's feelings about this, because for goodness, yeah, for Black Americans, like you grow up and you see people with your skin color like constantly on the downside of American history, and you constantly look in seats of power and you don't see people that looks like you. That has an effect on your psyche, right? That has an impact on your psyche, and for people not to acknowledge that as something significant, well, maybe we have to get you to read some books and to have an emotional experience to relate to it in a way where something will go off, right? Or like, and it's ridiculous that it took, watching a cop kneel on someone's neck for 9 minutes. I haven't watched the entire video. I can't do it. No. Like I can't make myself watch that whole video.
No.
And there are still people who have watched it and that would look to me and say, oh, well, I've done more of my work then because you haven't watched it and I have. And I'm like, no, there's a much longer history for me with this. Like I know this experience here. Like this is a Marvel film for you at this point, right? Like this is Avengers Endgame. Like you just got to see the ending, right? And that's your experience so far.
In our classroom discussions, go ahead, finish up.
No, go for it.
In our discussions over this last week, we have in my classes from Millersville a wide variety, typically, even in my smaller classes, of backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And so there was some frustration this week when students said that they would rather remain underinformed because it's too much trouble to dig in and learn all the new things and it's painful,
It
and
is.
obvious stuff. And when students in my classes say that, the students who have suffered look at them and they're frustrated at them.
Mm.
They're, wow, I can't believe you said that. Man, I can believe you said it because I hear it all the time, but you're saying it right there in front of everybody. You don't mind being ignorant because it's less painful. And if you get to choose, if we're not shoving it down your throat, or like me, I'm always starting shit in my classes. Like one of my students said that,
Yeah.
do we always have to end with shit? She didn't mind starting shit, but she said that students seem to be at odds with each other along racial lines, privilege lines at least. If not racial, at least class lines. Comfortable versus growing up without, paycheck to paycheck, without the medical care you need, without the orthodontia. That's a difference in Millersville students. That there are people from around here who are Mennonites, who are very rural, who don't always have straight teeth, and I don't see Amish people in universities much, but I do notice that white rural and black urban people often mixed for the first time in my classes. They don't know each other, and then they start to compare notes, and they notice they have some things in common. But one thing that the urban people always, they're rolling their eyes. They've seen it their whole lives. They're like, they have not a clue what it feels like to be me. They have no clue what my schools are like. They have no clue what my experiences with police are like. But they have no clue what my financial system situation was like. They don't understand that my neighborhood was redlined, and that none of my ancestors could get a loan in that part of Philadelphia because of redlining. And they're not even willing to talk about it. And in my classes, we get this kind of an undertone. Sometimes it's overt, and then it's really ugly. But when it's undertone, it's, why do we have to talk about this? Why do we have to talk so much about this? Why are you always harping on this, Howell? And who's the one saying that every time is the one in the privileged class.
That's it.
So
That's
if it's,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so if it's the people who have been oppressed, they're like, yeah, let's talk about this. And what I've seen is with people of color, from Philadelphia especially, and Baltimore, that there is a kind of a working together, the way Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X were describing, with poor people sticking together, especially black and brown poor people sticking together, realizing that this is a common struggle. It isn't just about race. I mean, you could almost just decide one or the other and you'd still get a lot of work done because it overlaps almost completely. But if we could, this is what the kids from Philadelphia have kind of led me to over the 6 years, is that they see that we need to be solving the systemic economic problems. And if we would be willing to do that, then it wouldn't be so scary to be black. Because a lot of what scares people is that they don't have a cushion. They don't have an economic cushion. They don't have any go-to. When things are tough, they don't have any backup plan. And their ancestors don't either. In their neighborhood, in their family, the wealth, especially because of the lack of home ownership, doesn't have a kind of cushion. There's no safety net. And there's no connected interfamily. I mean, there is a very big interconnected family net, but it doesn't have a lot of money attached to it. And so then and then the people who say, why do we have to talk so much about this? I would love to give you a shot at them, because we don't understand it yet, or at least really understand it yet.
Mm. So my initial response, is with, so I agree that there's like the racial divide and the prejudices, and then there's a socioeconomic divide and the prejudices, and there is a slight, the part of that Venn diagram that does not stick out, that still sticks on color. I I think I posted it somewhere. It was a Martin Luther King quote about the Reformation era and the slavery era and the poor white man and the poor black man. Like uh, well, I'll paraphrase, but he said, if it can be said of the slavery era that the white man gave the Negro Jesus, and then it can be said of the Reconstruction era that the white man it can be said that the Reconstruction era gave the white man Jim Crow, and when his wages were low and he couldn't provide for his family, he feasted upon Jim Crow, and like he looked at the signs and the wherever he would see Jim Crow or whatever, and his children would come to him, and his children would come to him and they would ask like, what can we eat? And when he couldn't feed them, he would point to Jim Crow and teach them to feast upon Jim Crow, and say, at least I'm not a black man. And Jim Crow was their last outpost of psychological oblivion. And that, I think that is the last part of this socioeconomic, like, other than that, it's that's the part of the Venn diagram. And the reason I say that is because I think that's still where this mindset is. Like like on that outlier, you still have like, oh, he was a thug. Oh, he was still a criminal. If he wasn't a thug, then he would have ended up a thug at some point, or some, like, you still see that kind of mind in that rural. I can't even just say because it's not all rural people, but in that metaphor, in the poor white man and the Jim Crow, like, I really think there's this question of why comparing to poor black and poor white culture, like, why is black culture so much more popular? Why are they getting so much advocacy? Like, because they look and they see hip hop and they see Black Lives Matter and they see it moving forward. They see a lot more of like black men and white women being more of a thing than you see with white women or white men and black women. You see the black men in more of a publicized role. Like, you see more of black culture, whether it's poor or whether whatever it is, you see more of that getting more limelight and more publicity than you do with poor white culture. Like, than you do with, or the stereotypes that are around either one. You see more of it. You don't see a lot of that with whether it's whatever comes with that lifestyle, like with the hunting, or with the well, I can't think of whatever numerous things would come with that right now. But
driving my pickup truck.
Yeah. There it is.
All right? The rural, like, yeah.
Like all of that, like, and I really, because I've heard this question. There's a genuine question of why is there so much focus and attention here, and why is this being praised? And and black folks are like, we're not being praised, we're being oppressed. Like, there's not praise, but there's still more attention coming here. And so it's like, well, no, you shouldn't be getting this, because I would, like, if I post something about this, then I still get attention from here. That's like, oh, let me defend Trump. Let me shut this stuff down. Like, why are they wasting money writing Black Lives Matter on well, now Black Lives Matter Plaza out here in DC? Like, why are they doing that? It's like anything you can do to, like, just get me to shut up. And it's like, why? We have more to gain. Like, the things I spend my life on out here, the things that I advocate for with like politically with, like, higher minimum wages, with public education, which we both need, higher minimum wages, which we both need, unionizing, which we both need, right? Like, there's so many things that we do, but there is something in this. There's that mindset that was brought up from that quote. That's like, all right, like, I know there's a question of why do you get this, but it's like, we really have so much more to gain work like being together than we do than we do being separate. And this is yes, this is at the lower class, urban, rural, poor black, brown, poor white, whatever. Like we really have so much more to gain if we can combine forces and uh, drop what we think
It's jealousy,
about
right?
each other.
I mean, if you had to describe it, it's an ugly thing, right? And it's
Yeah.
like jealousy. It's like turf. It's like tribalism for sure.
Mhm.
But it's like if somebody zero sum thinking. If somebody has something that they don't now have, it's probably going to come out of your pocket somehow. It's gonna somehow anyone else's gain is going
Yeah.
to be my loss,
Yeah.
and that's the
Yeah.
ugly part of it. And to me, that's why I want to be a teacher, is because I believe that people can be taught not to believe those values. I think values are the most important thing we teach, especially in the arts, but any in math too. And so if we're teaching people values, especially when they're young enough to comprehend that their own suck, we can point out. I still
Yeah.
remember at Edinburgh, we had this girl, blonde girl. Okay, let's just go that far. And I think it was like a year, maybe a year before you got there. I'm pretty sure you know this girl. And we were in methods class, you remember, in the old building in the music department. And somebody had prepared something with the way you would have done it, with audio visuals, and really did a nice job and had it all ready to, and it came out of the box and the students loved it. It was like, wow. And her only reaction was, I just had her name just now I know her name, so I'll tell you at the end of this. She was like, "Oh, I hate you," or I mean, she was laughing. "Oh, you suck." It's like, because you did something that makes me feel bad about myself. Your
Mhm.
excellence makes me feel bad about myself because you did something really excellent. And you mentioned a lot of different areas, the arts, of course, and just culture in general. You're not wrong. And you think about all the music history, you're not wrong. The culture that you come from is, everyone else wants it. Everyone else pays attention to it. And then you think about, you also brought this up, the stereotype of a black man with a white woman, and how that's gone down in the South. People I know well in Florida, I know how that goes with them, and Georgia. And it's ugly. It's something where it feels as though you're mad at the other person because they're excellent. And what kind of energy is that? How are we going to, because you say how much we can gain if we're all combined, but how can you combine when that sort of shitty attitude is in the mix? How do we solve that?
Yeah. You when you said teaching values, that's yeah. It's hard because I would judge a lot of learning values is from what we see modeled, you know, and if that's not being modeled for us, well,
Or
it's what we see
challenge?
modeled. If it's what we see modeled in the household, but yeah, I think a lot of us as kids and even as adults, like we see different things modeled from yeah from our professors, from our different experiences and all that, like and from the teachers we've had as we've gotten older.
Yeah.
I certainly have. I certainly have. Absolutely.
I called
Yeah.
her out. I don't think you were in the same year, but I think you know her. I did mention, I said, well, this is a good teachable moment. Let's have a topic of conversation about this. And we spent the rest of the class. We didn't even have the lessons. Everyone had all their lessons prepared as normal. It was a Friday. And instead of doing those lessons, we said, what is this feeling of being offended by someone else's excellence?
Mhm.
And she ended up writing a journal about it. She totally agreed. She saw it as bullshit. She saw it in herself. It was the right outcome. It was a triumph educationally.
Good.
It,
Good.
it was
Yeah.
great, but wow, it's like being a gardener, and you get up and you go in and you just see all these weeds, and you just had them all cleaned out. And then when you realize you never had them cleaned out, you just had this little tiny part that you could see cleaned out. When you get in there and you start to pull them, you're like, we're never going to get all these weeds pulled. And that's how it feels to be a teacher right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, I think that's a big part of my path in mental health these days. Is I love it because that's where the fight is. Like it's the mindsets. And yeah, not just cognitively, but it's the emotional, like patterns and the things that we latch onto, and uh, this like these parts of people's psyche that never really got to grow up, um, and the reasons why, like I've been teaching kids, right, for a while, but in adults, it's like I interact with them all the time, like we and I have my own inner child, right, like we've learned to compensate for those parts of our psyche that didn't get a chance to grow up. We learn the language of like how to defend them so we sound like we're adults. Right?
I remember one of your friendships that you've mentioned not too long ago that's always seems to devolve into being competitive,
Oh yeah.
as opposed to, I just want you to be happy, and anything that makes you happy, anything that causes you to succeed and feel good about yourself, that's what I want, because I'm your friend. I care about you, I love you, I want you to win. Your winning is my winning. That's, to me, that's genuine love. That's what we're trying to get. And that's what our knees don't jerk in the right direction with every person. Like some people bring out the worst in us.
Yeah.
But if that worst is there anywhere, I think it's a homework assignment to that competitiveness, that jealousy, envy. Envy is what it really is. It's envy, and it's the ugliest thing in life, and it's fear-based. It's based on the idea that there won't be enough for all of us. So, and that was the Jim Crow example. At
Yeah.
least that's where that all
Yeah.
comes in.
The idea that there won't be, because it's man, that idea, right, that there won't be enough, and it's an old one too, right? That's gosh, there was a what was there I can't even think of it now, but there's biblical stories
Yeah.
about that, right? Like that's a it's an old lesson, like but to give of yourself to someone, even like thinking of doing this, right? I just had this conversation uh, uh, with with a counselor on Friday, like the like to give of yourself, like purely and in good ways, like in good energy and all that stuff, like you hit points where where you're tired, like you get these points where you're tired, and it's like, how can I give, and how can I give and not feel like and not hit a point where it's like I don't have enough, right? Like I don't have enough, so of course I'm gonna feel like I need to judge someone else or cut down someone else to uh, like there's not enough. I'm gonna act like there's not enough because I don't feel like there's enough. And there was one point that I hadn't considered. There was one point that I didn't consider. Like I had a lot of positive thoughts and positive psychology, but like any feeling of being tired or feelings of like discomfort or if anxiety or whatever it is, like, and this is a bit philosophical, I get, but like I was judging all of these feelings as I was judging all of these feelings as bad, like I'm judging all of these experiences of like I'm tired of that they're bad feelings, and then that judgment is what takes on that judgment takes on I don't have enough. Like that judgment helps me come to the conclusion that I don't have enough and I need to solve this right now. right? Like, and I need to have right now. And it doesn't happen until I'm tired. It doesn't happen until I'm tired, because until then, I'm not worried about it. Until then, I'm not worried about I'm flying high. But just because I experience the feelings of if I experience anxiety, if I experience fatigue, if I experience any of those are not negative experiences. They're human experiences. I don't need to form any judgments around them.
Yeah.
A, right? B, it's part of the human process. Like that peace, like the peace and being refilled, like that happens. Like that will come. Like those things come back to me. Like that will return to me. Like it's part of the human process for me to feel like I expelled, and then for me to be refilled. Like that is just a natural part of things. And the more I can, the less I judge, or I need to form judgments around what my immediate emotional experiences are. The I believe the more I can start tapping into this sort of never-ending river that I can pour out from at that point. I wasn't getting that, because every time I feel tired, I'm like, I don't have enough. This is bad. It's like, no, it's not bad. It's what's happening. Like it's just what's happening, right? Like the sun comes up, it's great. When it goes down, it's not bad, right? It's nighttime. Like it's nighttime. Like it's a part of the process. So and like the judgments formed around the experiences of what's happening. I mean, gosh, that's in, like, for myself, caused it. Like that was the root of a lot of the depression, the anxiety, and a lot of the feelings. But I think that is where a lot of the I need to cut down someone else because I don't have enough. I think that's where a lot of that. I think that's where a lot of that comes from. Like because I'm projecting onto someone else. I don't feel like I have enough. Like I don't feel like I have enough. Like I'm projecting that on other people somehow. So it's like, no, I need to keep them from having enough. Like, because it's all I have to run with.
Yeah, scarcity.
You know.
And I wondered if you were going to get to that never-ending river, because that was in the back of my mind. Oh, maybe 10 minutes ago, I was thinking about that idea that we've talked about, that there's a reservoir, untappable, you can't use it all. There's a reservoir, and it's a construct, okay? So it's a philosophical construct. And maybe it's just useful if we think that way because it makes us feel better, or maybe it's real. And for me, some of the most powerful constructs work because they are real. I know they're real, damn it. And that's one of those. That there is a vastness to me and to you and to each of us, an untappable, unsinkable, unstoppable, getting to the end of a bowl, no way that we could ever use up all of the resources and be tired and think, oh, I have to clutch something that someone else has. I have to snatch it away from them because I'm tired and I don't have enough. But if we have a true belief, I say because that's my belief, a true belief that there is an unlimited reservoir of what we need, when we act as though it's true, it is true for those of us who figure it out. And then we don't feel that way. We may get tired sometimes. And in my classes and in conversations with you, we've talked about being an introvert versus being an extrovert. And introverts do get tired. And a lot of great performers are introverted, a lot of the most famous ones. And when they're done with their show, they have to crash, they have to relax, they have to isolate themselves. It's very normal. And that part of the feelings that you describe sound like what I feel as an introvert. It feels like there are times when I just need to shut down and isolate myself. And there's nothing wrong with it. And your idea that you're not going to judge those ideas, you're not going to determine them to be bad, that your feelings are not necessarily bad. That's a Zen way of thinking. That's an Eastern way of thinking.
Yeah.
Who am I to say that this is a bad thing? And and then that can take away the fear and the sting and the knee jerk of snatching something away from someone else. And the people we value, who are wise, who are deep, who seem to be vast reservoirs of everything they need, seaworthy vessels, those people we both know, don't clutch anything from anyone else. They don't need anyone else. They don't get mad at other people because they're not giving them something, and they don't get mad at other people because they're succeeding. That's just not what that looks like. It looks a person who is a vast reservoir of everything they need, who's a seaworthy vessel with no leaks. They don't they don't get like that. They don't get pissy like that, and that shitty attitude of, it's not fair. My sister got an ice cream and I didn't because I didn't go with mom to the store. Man, I'm so mad at my sister because she got that ice cream. Instead of, I'm so happy for my sister, my beautiful, sweet sister who has ice cream. I'm so happy that she got some ice cream and that she ate it all the way. She completely finished it before she got home,
Yeah.
knowing I'd be here. That I'm so glad that she had that experience. Uh,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
fundamental problem that we face.
It's it is a heart it's a heart level, it's a core value level,
Yeah,
however we want to put it.
yeah,
It's a core problem. Yeah, it's a core issue. It's and it's hard to get to. It's hard to touch on. It's so sensitive, and it feels really young, and it feels really young because at some point it's like because at some point in some way, like there was some part of us that didn't get what it needed, or that didn't get uh, that didn't get something in some way, and so it's like suddenly got to take on this mindset that, all right, well, I'll never get it, I'll never get what I wanted, or I never got whatever, so I'm always in a state of need, and nobody else can have it, or however you form your judgments around that, right? But getting in touch with that and just spending time with it, right? Like just spending time with it. This is kind of a Jungian idea, right? Like the idea that the like if there are inner immature parts that are acting out, like this, then the main things they're looking for are to be heard and to be taken seriously, right? Like those major pieces, and and in my belief, for a lot of young men, really really to be spent time with, from ourselves, like learning from ourselves, like to really take time and spend time with these pieces, because they were missing some attention from positive male figures in some way. And so it's like we take on this part for ourselves, and it's like eventually we give ourselves this emotional education that we don't need so much. But that's a lot of work, and that's where the modeling came into place, because it's like that's why we have mentors, right? Like, and we learn how to do that. Like I learned in some of my adolescence, like in the times we spent together. I learned different techniques in that with the therapies and stuff that I've been to, or this Mankind Project stuff I'm doing now, and the stuff they model for me now, like but it's like, but I have to do the work with this part of myself, because I'm the one that has to deal with it. I'm the one that has to carry it around, and I'm the one that is going to keep creating these judgments. That's going to keep projecting onto other people. No, you can't have that, right? But if I spend enough time, and if I can do whatever my work is, if I can deal with whatever my shit is here to say, I'm going to take care of my inner emotional self, then I can learn to approach others with some compassion, with some empathy. Maybe I'll be able to, like you said, celebrate when others do well, even if they're doing better than I am in an area that I'm trying to achieve, right? Like, that is there are last night with a friend, we were playing video games, and in video game forms I revert like I revert to a younger self sometimes, and even when I win, sometimes I still get frustrated. And I'm like, I didn't win good enough. It's like just in a video game form. It's like, uh, but it's getting to work at that. It's like how can I carry this in? Uh, how can I do this work so that when I'm in real life, uh, when I'm in my job or wherever. And my big goal lately, especially, is like when somebody comes at me with some nonsense that I'm either not ready for or I don't want to hear or whatever it is, and I can see that they are really that they're in need and they're trying to cut me down or they're in their brain stem, whatever terminology I want to use, that I have what I need, and I can either facilitate them away from me, see through it, and whatever it is, but that I don't need to be re-triggered to undo the work that I did, to go in my brainstem and start arguing. Like my piece, has already come back to me. Like I'm tapped into my well. I don't want to like untap right. I want to stay centered in whatever way that looks like. If that means that they need to get shut down nicely or like put in their place in some way, great. If that means that I need to just step away in that time, great. But it's going to come from that river, right? It's going to come from that never-ending river. It's not going to come from me not having enough.
Do no harm, take no shit.
That's it.
Takes that river into account, because people get the do no harm part and then they're nice. Oh, I'm so nice. But the take no shit is, it's crucial. And your power, your river or your reservoir is the main thing that makes you not have to take shit.
Because I would thought like I was because I was, in parts of me, I think parts of me still are. I'll admit that. Like there's such a people pleaser thing. Like, and I think that's part of my, that's one of my inner child things. Like it's like like I want to please so much. It's like, the do no harm part is great. But I would do so much to go to the other end to like, all right, now instead of making sure that I'm not taking from that person, like, but now I'm paying things out of like that I don't need to give them. Like now it's like I'm doing too much. And it's like, no, like you said, do no harm, take no shit. Like I can do both of these things lovingly. Like I can do both of these things lovingly. Like I can cut you off, and I don't need to go back to like someone who's going to do harm to me. Like I don't need to go back to my abuser, right? Like I don't need to return to some place that's going to willingly hurt me to no positive end. I don't need to do that. Goodness, I had to have a realization this week. Like I almost went back to a vocal teacher that was very mentally unhealthy for me because I wanted to learn. I'm like, hey man, this dude was good musically and blah blah blah. Gave him a phone call, and in that conversation, I felt all this stuff come back. Like, this dude's narcissistic. Like he's a, whatever else. But like after the phone call, I was just like, I just don't feel good about this. Like I talked to it about with a couple friends. I'm like, I'm not going back to that place. Yeah. Hey, I'm glad we chatted, but I'm going to go another direction. Yeah.
I'm glad that it went the way it did, because if you think about the economic part, that's where allies probably, hopefully, once we do this other work, but this other work needs to be done before there's the jealousy, the envy, the pearl clutching, the idea that we need to not, the idea that if someone else is doing well, that means we're doing poorly. The whole thing we just unpacked. That's probably the root of the work that needs to be done for people if they're trying to figure out from whatever place they're coming from. If they, and you used young, I think you were going to say young soul or old soul, and you didn't say this, but you have before about maybe a kingly soul, somebody who has an energy that's old and powerful and wise and vast. That's the king energy. And if you were thinking along those lines, getting yourself to that point and helping others get to that point would be the groundwork that would allow then a poor people's march to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's too easy to snap your fingers and say, "Oh, just forget all the differences, forget all the hatreds that have been sown over 600 years, just forget it all, and let's just have poor people's marches like Martin Luther King said, that'll be great, it'll be all done just like that, wrapped it up good."
Yeah.
And the work has to be done, and that's where the process versus the product. I don't know if you remember talking about that before, but the
Mm-hmm.
process versus the product people. You've got the behaviorists who just want to see the results. They're neoliberals. And then you've got the people who want the process to happen, the real work that needs to happen before the actual conjoining of hearts and minds can happen. That matters more than making money for our
Yeah.
values to come in. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. When the goal is process, I am more, when it comes to mental and emotional things, like the, I feel more patience necessary when it comes to individual work, just because it can't be inauthentic for that kind of thing to happen. And there's more hope for. I think there's more. I think there's more hope for that to happen, because I don't believe poor people, like, I don't even want to say it like that. I don't believe non elite, or like like the non elite mindset has a difficult time looking in the mirror and seeing past their own mask. I think it takes some guidance. I think it takes some guidance to get there, but to get in touch with that, I don't think it. I think there's some BS that gets in the way, but it's an emotional charge. Like there's emotionally charged parts, like the fact that I don't know, like, say, like, if you take the stereotype of, like, some of what's at some of these rallies that Trump has, that really, that has a strong disgust for what's happening in the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you take somebody in the heart of a Black Lives Matter movement that has a strong disgust for what's going on with Trump right now, the big difference is not between the two of them, but between the two of them and the elites. Like, they are really in touch with their charges. They're really in touch with their emotions. They're really in touch with what's happening, right? And so to look in the mirror and to see what is happening, like, yeah, like, it might be like, okay, well, like, let's plug this in over here. It's not going to be impossible, right? But for an elite mindset, there's like this, gosh, man, it's like I've interacted with it in a way that it's like there's like this dissonance where you hold up a mirror, and like there's like this breakdown that starts to happen, like that, like they just can't see past a certain point, or there's like a belief that, like, if I'm not perfect, then I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm not perfect, then I can't be of service. So this is what I give to the world, right? So, like, this belief is what I project on the world, and that is how the world is of service, is perfection, right? And because I can afford to have this mindset about myself, like, and all these other people can't, then all of these other people that aren't in this category, I can keep them here subconsciously, right? And I have enough power and influence to do that.
Yeah.
That work for somebody in that position is a lot harder, because there's a lot less accountability. There's a lot less reason for them to, I guess, as far as like what do they have to lose, or what do they have to gain externally, right? But I mean, internally there's a lot to gain, but I don't think they look at it. I just think it's a tougher process for an elite mindset. And the tough process for the lower class to have a revolt would also have to be to not get weary, right, and to just not to give in, which I think a lot would. I think a lot are in touch with. Well, the Black Lives Matter movement, like, there's a long history of that. So, like, there's a long history of, like, we're not giving in anyway. But the not buying into bullshit. Let me say that. Like, there, with certain political leaders, it's not that, like, the people who are like die hard, right? The people who are like die hard 100,000%. It's not a political investment. It's almost a religious investment. Like, the die hard, my judgment, with the die hard Trumpians, even I was an Obama fan. We disagree there, but I wasn't a die hard 100%, but he had some that are die hard 100% people, but like any of them that were like that, it was more of a religious devotion than it was
Right.
a political affiliation.
Right.
And and I say that because it was like anything in my worldview that I can pull into this political affiliation, I'm going to do it one way or another. So whoever this figure is he can be forgiven for anything. So, like, no matter what happens, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, I'm going to pull that in here. I would judge that's been the most obvious now, and most absurd now. I would make those judgments with Trump, because he just does and says what he wants at this point, and he does it more freely than most have. He doesn't try to be so coy or deceptive. He's just kind of out in the open with how he thinks. But it's been so religious. To have a movement like that, you can't get bought back in with high level narcissism. Like, you can't get bought back in with that.
You're so opposed after a while to anything that clashes with your religion. Lynn gets that way sometimes about Bernie, and I'll say, now look, we have to tell the truth. We can't just pretend that things are different than they are. And that loyalty can hurt us. We've got to actually tell the truth. And that's a way to avoid dogma. Because what you're describing is the opposite of dogma. And the people who will follow anyone religiously have a dogmatic point of view, and it doesn't matter what you tell them. Like, if you have a dogmatic clinging to any politician, and then there are facts that come up, truth about that politician that don't make you happy because that doesn't jive with your emotional, cultural, religious, cult-like feelings about that person. Now that's where people start to get pissed. Wait, how dare you? You're saying, that my cult figure is a cult figure. Stop that. And but what you describe as the antidote is that we have to be willing to put it all into policy and politics, and not personality and identity.
Yeah. That's
tough. That's very tough for some people.
It is because a lot of movements take leaders, and if somebody or if individuals were to step forward for that, they would have to recognize the same thing, right? Like, there was who is it? There's a famous guy. He's a Middle Eastern guy, and he's a popular speaker, just like about philosophy, and he's much Krishnamurti.
Okay.
Krishnamurti. A friend of mine listens to him a lot, and his philosophy. He'll talk about one thing for a very long period of time, but by the time you can sit there after an hour and a half, and like you'll get it. But the thing that I respect about this guy is when he started getting really big, like he'll move away from the spotlight and he'll just drop off because he doesn't he doesn't want the big following. He doesn't want that kind of like religious figure or whatever kind of figure thing. I mean, which I guess we could judge as is like a move in its own, but like it's an effort to say like this was part of the problem is, you know, when somebody has a lot of these good things to say and creates like some good momentum, it starts to become more about this person than it does about the things they say. So when that starts happening to me, I'm going to step away from the spotlight and just leave you with this stuff. And his and the people he follows, or the people who follow him, they're aware of that. Like it was pretty neat. I don't see a lot of people who do that, but I thought that was a pretty cool thing. But yeah, his name's Krishna Murni.
Okay.
Murni, yeah.
If you ever bump into Kate Johnstone, she's in Australia, and she spends time. I don't know if Murdy does this, but there's an idea of politics, but then how your own soul interacts with the politics, and she spends about as much time in each area. So your philosophical bent comes through when you're talking about politics, and you have to figure out what it means to you and how you interact with it at a soul level. That's my observation. And then I watch your face, and that's what it looks like it's doing. And then you figure out what it means to you at a very deep level. And that's where Kate Johnstone is too. And it sounds like this guy that you just mentioned. And I think we need to do that work. I think that's also part of the work. I think there's not going to be a lot of finger snapping and cheerleading that's just going to quickly solve all the problems, because the people who are in the way have been in the way a long time. And we're going to need some old souls sticking together, not just hotheads, not just rioters and protesters, but we'll need those too. But we'll need some old heads that also know what matters, know what we're trying to get out of it at the end, not just to throw everything in the ditch, but because we've never had a movement of the people from the bottom that ended up not being co-opted by assholes. And so for us to not get co-opted, we need to do the work to understand what our souls require, what we need to avoid doing. Like you were talking about judging your own thoughts and other things like that. We need to do the personal work too, or it'll feel like we took too many shortcuts. We'll get to a place that was too easy, because I don't think it's going to happen with us just saying all we got to do is do a general strike, and then we have to know what to ask for when it's over, and then everyone's happy. But I don't think that's going to do it. I think we're not going to have enough unity if we don't do the work underneath that.
Right, and it takes a lot of work that is outside of my boundary, like outside of my boundary of control. I could say that. Maybe certainly not outside of my influence, but like certainly outside of my control. But because it's if we're talking about real change, that's it. Like that is it. I mean, look what it took for us to consider these things. Like we literally had to pause the country with a pandemic, and for people to sit in their homes and to kind of be frozen to think and consider things for a while, right? Like and now this and now the response to these things, like I'm gonna pull back some. I think that it takes a lot of internal work. You're right. Yeah, Yeah, I don't know where else to what else to say for that one.
On
Um,
on my calendar, I put Jammin with Jonathan. I put 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. That's when we
yeah.
started jamming with Jonathan. And in my head, I had the idea that it would be both spiritual and, or philosophical, at least, and political. And it would be a personal journey as well as a collective journey that we would,
Hmm.
and nothing much other than that, just, and refreshing, not exhausting.
Yeah.
So if that's what we got done, then I'd like to do it again, and on a basis, and the kinds of topics almost don't matter as much because they'll kind of fall into that pattern. And if people like watch and listen to us and make suggestions, I think you ought to talk about this. It wouldn't surprise me if people said, well, I would really enjoy hearing two distinct perspectives on this topic, as long as it's not exhausting and it seems refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm open. I'm open to that. I I certainly. I mean, given all the stuff I've been posting recently, like the psychology stuff, I love. Um, I don't know how it's going to take place, but I believe my life is heading in that direction somehow. But I mean, it already is. But however that takes place. But the philosophical things, and then I mean, they always pull back to to how life works in some sense. Yeah, this we started. What do we? Yeah, where did we started with the questions, and then the gap, and then the understanding, and trying to bridge it, and why, uh, because like, and it comes back, because there needs to be inner work done. Like there needs to be inner work done, whether it's understanding black and white, um, or the understanding rich and poor, or trying to bridge the the gaps, the racial gaps that are within the lower class, or just the non-elite class, uh, to show unity, and like say, hey, like this is what we need. This is in our best interest,
Yeah.
right? Because probably when I'd say at this point, probably when Biden wins, there likely will be a lot more things to come to light that don't represent a lot of people, that a lot of these people that we're going to feel the frustrations there too.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, the hope is that it's more unifying to say, hey, we need better representation, because we're tired of being cornered to say pick the lesser of two evils for the last two elections. Like we're tired of that. Um, we are we are really tired of that. The Oh yeah, that was another thing that I was thinking of, was we were talking black and white and rich and poor. Like, I was thinking about that with men and women as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Karen
It's
energy. The Karens, I know they're killing us.
uh, there's an Instagram page called Karen's Gone Wild, and they just videotape these. Like, it's like people submit their videos to this page, and they like, the people on that page, they find their info, they send their videos into their bosses or their colleges if it's a student. In the male version, they call them Kevins. I thought they were called something else, but they call them Kevins. But if it's really obvious or really bad and not controversial, these people get fired. Like, they get fired from their jobs. Their acceptance into colleges get declined. Like, and I'm glad that's a thing. Like, I'm glad that is a real thing happening now, because it's like there's some level of accountability, of social accountability that's taking place. Um, but yeah, that uh, that another Sunday maybe.
Yeah. With pleasure. I would love to do that.